Hi, this is Erik Walsh from KDH News. We're in the KDH News studio. I just spoke with Coppers Cove Superintendent Brent Hawkins. We talked about the upcoming $165 million bond that Coppers Cove residents are going to be voting on this November. We also spoke about the new cell phone policy that is across all of the state of Texas and how things are going in the Coppers Cove schools. He said that because many of the students are military family, there's lots of discipline and things have been good early on. We also heard from the Clean Daily Herald education reporter, Ethan Housewright, and he asked Hawkins about the 10 Commandment bill that requires some posters to go up, and we got an update on how that's going as well. Hope you enjoy the video. Thank you. Well, Dr. Brent Hawkins, thanks so much for coming. I appreciate you coming here to Killeen. It's not very far away, but I really appreciate you coming to where we're at and taking the time for this today.
Well, thank y'all for having me, and we're just, excited to, to be able to speak to you folks out there and tell them about the things that's going on in Cove that we're excited about.
So I guess one thing I was wanting to know about is you got a nickname. You go by Hawk.
Yeah. All my life.
Yeah?
Yeah, all my life. Mr. Hawkins was my dad. I got my doctorate, and that was just to mainly to just a self, improvement journey that I was on. I know some people really go after those things to change their name, and that was never the intent of mine. But my first name's Brent.
Yes.
And the only time that anybody ever says that is either my mother or my wife, and it's probably not a good situation when that comes out. And so, matter of fact, if I'm in a room, somebody says Brent, 9 times out of 10, I won't ever turn around.
Really?
So from the time I was knee high to today, folks just call me Hawk.
Yeah, so I can call you Hawk.
Absolutely.
Okay, I will. Well, Hawk, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'm going to talk to you mostly about the bond, but I've got a couple other things I want to go with in our education reporter's got some questions too. So first, I want to ask about how the cell phone policy is going along. I know there's going to be resistance to it. Kids are going to want their phones. So how has that been coming along so far since House Bill 1481's been implemented?
It would probably surprise you because it really did me. Sitting in a restaurant and watching families, or sitting in my house and watching my girls grow up. We came from Generation X, who, when I come through school, we didn't have to worry about anybody videoing us. Mm-hmm. We didn't have to worry about anybody with a cell phone in their hand, and thank goodness, because I'd have probably gotten a whole lot more trouble than what I did when I was younger. But today, I don't think there's anybody that can argue that we have the most talented generation in the history of the world that is the most unengaged in the history of the world. The percentage of students, young folks with depression, is at an all-time high. They're more anxious than any time ever before. And so I think as a society that we're really going to have to do some things to put some guardrails in place for everybody's safety and mental health. I wish that would have been the Board of Trustees all across the state of Texas and parents. However, the legislature got involved in it. And my concern through that whole deal was, you've got this social media fire that's burning out there with a group of parents that was having meltdowns about the law when it come into place. And so there was predictions of just complete civil disobedience. And so, we tried to communicate. And I think the other thing is this: we're real blessed in Cove that we got some great kids. Sure. They come from great homes. Half of them are military connected, And so, you expect discipline in military households. You expect that military culture there. And but we prepared for the worst. We communicated to our folks. We went through the process of attorneys vetting it, school board, and then rolled out into policy and regulations that operate on the campuses. And so, with all that said, I mean, there's signage when you go in CCHS. There's signage on the junior high campuses, just to remind our kids, because it's a habit.
Sure.
And after we went Thursday, Friday of last week, and we're sitting here today, and I asked yesterday evening, and I think that there has been 10 instances across the district. And so, when you think of 2,300 high schoolers and about 1,700 junior high students, and 95% of them have phones, I think that's
it's a good start.
Well, it's a telltale, because I wondered, were kids more addicted to cell phones or vapes? And I know the first morning to school, a cell phone wasn't the first thing taken up. We had a student that made a bad choice that brought a vape to school, and so vapes started leading the choice of shame there. But no, I also yesterday went to Cove High, and I wanted to get input from the people that was in the trenches, the teachers. And I walked the halls and talked to numerous teachers, and they were very excited about the social engagement and interaction between themselves and their students, and between students to students. We kind of laughed about it because, we expect there to be cards brought back to the lunchroom. Back in my day, kids sat in the lunchroom after they got through eating, they played cards. And we also expect there to be some discipline referrals at some point about kids passing notes, because back in the 70s and 80s, we passed notes.
In the 90s, that's what I did. In the 90s, I didn't have a cell phone yet.
No, I think the teachers were very excited, and I just commend the parents, commend the students, because we don't have time to do the things that we need to do if we become the cell phone police. And like the law or dislike the law, it is the law. And we need to teach the next generation of Texans that we need to comply with law, whatever it is, and that there is a democratic process in our republic that you can go through to change the law. But just being obstinate is not the right way to do things, and that's what we want to teach kids today, is the right way to handle things, whether you agree with them or disagree with them.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So sample size is still small because the school year is young, but it seems like students are receptive to the new rules so far.
I think they're aware. I think they're receptive, and here's the deal. You see failure when people don't know what they don't know. And so that's why we tried to communicate so well to them. And the second venue that causes failure in society is when there's a lack of consistency. So now that we've
that's a big one.
The ship has left
Yes.
the port, we've got to make sure that we're doing our jobs as adults and being consistent
Yes.
with it, because kids are like water. They take the path of least resistance. And so if they can see that there's a waffling or anything like that, then they'll do it. But as long as there's consistency within the rules, consistency with, I'm not letting Erik use his cell phone, and sorry, Ethan, you can't, so
The
as
fifth
long as
period
there's
teacher is
consistency,
okay with it, then it
right?
must,
And that, I think that's important too, is because the rules are the rules, and we don't prop doors open, and we don't carry cell phones, because those things are state law. And so teachers have to know that and understand that, and abide by it, because you set kids up for failure when the fifth period teacher allows something that the first period
Right.
teacher doesn't.
Right. I agree. Okay. We'll move on from that. Ethan, you were wondering about some things about some other rules the state legislator has started. What were you wondering about?
Sure. So I'm sure another source of controversy among parents probably is the Ten Commandments mandate and the state legislature. What's the update on that? Where are y'all at with that?
Well, I think you saw it in the news that there's been an injunction placed against it. Once again, I've told the staff that we intend to comply with whatever the law is. And so when the law figures out what the law is, we'll comply with it. But no, there's donors that are, because, it's not that you have to put the Ten Commandments up. You have to if it's donated.
Sure.
And there are donors that are donating those posters. And we have been reached out to by an anonymous donor, and I think we did give them the amount of rooms that we have in Cove, and so I expect at some point in time that we will get those posters shipped to us, and when we do, at that point, if it's not tied up in court to where we can't, then we will put those things up. And I just say that from this, I'm an old sinner. I'm saved by the grace of Jesus Christ. I believe in God's holy word. I believe in the commandments. And so I say all that to say this, though. My God, you don't have to force on anyone. And, we serve, and I plumb back to when I taught Hurst, Euless, Bedford. I had 37 kids in a class. I had kids from Pakistan, Tongans, all folks from all walks of society, very diverse group of kiddos. And we all got along. But at the same time, my religion, I fail every day. But through the grace of God, I'm saved, and I want to live a godly life. And so I struggle to try. The thing that I want to do is I want you to be able to look at me and say, hey, that guy's a Christian there. And then, I've never saved anyone. I have started conversations, and the Holy Ghost has saved people in my time. I've been blessed to be a part of that. But I don't know exactly what we're trying to get with putting the Ten Commandments up there. I've never seen anybody argue with any of them. The Ten Commandments are pretty profound. And so I haven't seen anybody just say, I don't like that one. But at the same time, the problem that I've got is I'm a Christian, I'm a Texan too, and I kind of believe in a little bit of freedom. And I don't think that you have to force Christianity on anybody. And like I say, if we're doing the things that we need to do, then people will look into us and say, hey man, I want what that guy has. And and there's this misnomer out there. I was asked 2 weeks ago, they said, how many people do you think in your school that is an employee of yours is a Christian? And I said, well, first of all, I've been here since January, and there's 1,300 employees. Right. So I'm not really sure. I'm still getting to know a lot of people. I know people, but getting to know them is a whole different thing. And so I said in my former district, I would say probably somewhere tick under 70%. We had a very high-going population. I would see my co-workers on the pews on Sunday, and then so here, I think it is high. But I did read nationally where 37% of teachers across the nation were evangelicals, and so I thought that was something, because so many times you start reading and you hear that the teachers are leading kids astray, and that they're heathens or idolaters or whatever, but the statistics don't support that. And so that's where I come down, both personally and professionally, on that. Like I say, we're we're going to give into Caesar what is Caesar's, and then we all have our personal opinion on it, but we'll comply with the law whenever the law decides what the law is.
Yep. Sounds very reasonable to me. I think I'm of a like mind when it comes to that kind of thing. So let's move on to the bond. This is the big thing happening here in Cove coming up. About a year and a half ago, there was a failed bond proposal, and to get some new facilities. It was a narrow vote. It was struck down by just 60 votes. It was really close. This time, there's a new one. So could you tell me, how did this proposal get made? What was the process to make this proposal? I understand there's a committee that made it. You guys didn't just decide it. A committee came up. Could you tell me about the committee and how this came about?
Yeah. First of all, I give a disclaimer. I can't, ethically, the superintendent's the one person in the district that doesn't have a life 24/7. You're ethically bound once a bond is called to not be able to say vote for it or against it. And so I can't advocate for it, but I can tell you the facts of it, and I can tell you the process and how it was brought about. With me, the whole process was brought about from my genesis of it in applying for the job in Cove. And so as I was applying for the job in Cove, I have 3 daughters, and I sicked them on reading anything that they could read about the community in social media, any aspect of it that they could find, and tell me what kind of community it is, because they are a little faster than me as far as going through social media. So, they came back and they said, Dad, it's very divisive. There was a bond issue that failed. It's kind of like a civil war erupted in the community. And so, as I applied for the job and kept looking, there were people that were very passionate about the bond. And from my standpoint, you had people that were hyper vigilant in their ideas and their beliefs of what it ought to be. It just really appeared to me as a community that really they had no consensus. That and that last bond, as I read through everything, it appeared that the question of is this good for kids wasn't the engine driving the train. It was, well, this is my idea, and this is my idea, and this is my idea, and this is my idea. And so you had a whole community with diverse ideas and thoughts and perspectives, and they were all just embroiled about it. And so as I got the job, and then we went through the goal setting process, the board, one of my goals is to go through a process with the community. And so the thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that the process was opened and that we had a community-driven grassroots committee that would bring something to meet the needs of the students. And so the one thing that I wanted to do was ensure that you had people that was on the last bond committee, and that you had people that's on this long-range facility committee planning process that we had. But I certainly wanted those people who were so radical in their thought and so passionate in their thought. That's what I wanted. And I wanted to have a committee that was capped at about 80. Because if you go, 100. If you go above 100 people who have radical thoughts, it's real hard to ever mold a consensus on what you can move forward. I mean, you can just have a civil war develop on the committee, and it just embroil, and kind of what happened in the last bond would be happening there with your 100 people. Yeah. So everyone who served on the committee previously was invited back to serve again. We did allow for nominations. I got contacts on nominations. We opened that up. We told people, said, listen, if we get over the threshold, then we'll have a waiting list. But we didn't sort people based on, well, Erik thought this, or Erik was against the bond. I thought it was important that you have people that were for the last bond, were against the last bond. And understand that those weren't the two groups, that there were people who were for the last bond that were not really happy with the plan. And there were people who were against the bond, and there were about 10 different perspectives on that, of why they were against the bond. And so I wanted to pull all of that together, and because I thought that iron sharpens iron, and that at the end of that process that we would have a product that I thought that that we could move forward with.
Okay.
And so once we got everybody that had accepted and had signed up, there were about 80 some odd people at that first meeting.
These are all Cove residents?
Well, some of them are, and some of them, the lion's share majority are.
Yeah.
But we had a person that lives. Cove is 53 square miles inside of our school district. But we also have people that may be closer to live closer to the administration building than somebody who's actually in Cove that lives on the outskirts of our district, that serve in some capacity. There's civic organizations and things like that we wanted voice and representation in there too. But yeah, 97% of these folks are Cove residents. And so we kicked off that first meeting with 80. And as we go through the process looked something along the lines of several hours of mini seminar info sessions, because once again, when people don't know what they don't know, they make bad decisions. And so in order to get a good product, one thing that you got to know is what are the needs. And so we had the Texas Association of School Boards that Dr. Burns had contracted, that had been in the district for about the last 3 years, developing a needs process of, what do your roofs look like, what is the life cycles of your buildings, and everything in between. And so you got to know what your needs are. You got to know something about school finance, because you got to, it's nice, when I was a boy growing up, my best friend's mother always used to get on us boys because we wanted a nice pickup. And, basically what she was saying, hey, you're going to look pretty, you're going to have to pay for it. Sure. And that meant that you can want that all you want to, but you got to find a way to finance it. And so they heard about finance. They were able to hear the programs that we have in the school. Because here's the deal, everybody wants to compare this district to that district or whatever. And every district is unique, because every district has its own set of curriculum programs, okay? For an example, Longview ISD. Longview, Dr. Wilcox retired up there, and I'm the guy that's kind of the godfather of superintendents. He has a meat lab in his high school. Well, every school doesn't have a meat lab. They're not turning out meat cutters and butchers. And so, so that every curriculum that's in those schools are determined by the local board of trustees, and it can vary widely. Some districts teach more science than other districts do. And so, we had to educate and to get our committee to understand what programs do we have in Cove, so that they would have a basis of what those were. The other thing that we had to do was we had to talk about cost of construction, and not only cost of construction, but cost of school construction, because the cost to build my house and the cost to build, a new elementary school or whatever is totally different. The doors that go on my house is not the doors that goes on our elementary schools because of codes. And aside from that, it has to be built tougher. There's 2 people and 2 bulldogs in my house, okay? And at Cove High, there's 2,300 kids. Think of how many steps a day on that floor compared to my floor at home. And so just from the standpoint of understanding construction, understanding what construction costs were, so we went through various seminars to get a knowledge base of that committee. And then the committee went through to prioritizing what those needs were, because there's like $400,000 worth of needs that were identified by the Texas Association of School Boards. Okay, and so in all of that need process, number one, in that finance process, we talked about district savings and fund balance too, because you can't fund balance your way out of that. We've got $76 million in fund balance. Okay, if you look at that $76 million, there's about $16 million that the board has assigned for construction, and so some of those things you have to have in there for cash flow, 3 months operating expenses. They're all in there because of the state red tape. Okay, so you can't just say, hey, we'll just write a $76 million check. You can't do that. That you have to have that money to cash flow your school. We had Williams Ledger that we're having construction on over there because of the flooding that come through the roof. You got $1 million deductible there. Well, that's where those $1 million come from, and deferred maintenance items that's in there as well. And so you can't fund balance your way into your plans. It's nice when you can, but we have looking at that needs assessment, we had a large amount of facilities that were entering the end of their life expectancy. And so there were 3 different times that they ranked everything, because like I say, you have to prioritize. Just like this, if we make $500 a week and our bills are $700, well, we got to figure out what are we going to pay and what are we not going to pay. And so they rank ordered those needs and what is the most important in their mind. And so they rank ordered them without funds, and then they come back and rank ordered them with funds. And so, for instance, if the roof at Williams Ledger cost this much money, then it said roof at Williams Ledger, and this is how much it was. And then in July, we started in May, and then in July, we started to come together and pushing together for a plan, and then they rank ordered the propositions that would be on there.
Okay.
So that's kind of it was a long process with a lot of hours, and hey, look, I'm just ecstatic that the committee was willing to donate that part of their life and time and commitment to that process.
Mm-hmm. So they after that process is over, they finalized priorities. Why didn't one of those priorities be building a new high school? Mm-hmm. A lot of people say build a new high school. Yeah. Why didn't they come up with that idea?
First of all, let me say that if there's anybody that wanted to build a new high school, it was me. And let me tell you why. And 19 years ago, I became superintendent. And I've built all kind of stuff in that time. And the thing that I know is this: when you can build a new school, you're doing it on a site. Okay? When you're working on a school that kids are in, the logistics of it's a nightmare, because safety becomes an issue and the coordination of it, and it takes a whole lot more planning and prep and that. The easiest thing for the district and the administration to do is to build a new school. And so when I read all these things and I came in as superintendent, my thought was, hey, let's figure out where we are on this. So I called 2 construction companies and I said, hey, I need to know some cost estimates to build a school that you could put 2,400 kids in and line up with what we have programmatically. And I also called 3 architect firms. I'm sorry, I'm backwards. I called 3 construction companies and 2 architect firms because Dr. Burns didn't hire a construction company, he hired an architect. So we had that information. So it was 3 and 3, considering the people who were in the last run of it. And not one person in those groups. And we're talking about some construction people that are building schools all over the state of Texas today. As we're sitting in this studio, they're out building schools. They're out designing schools. And so they are, it's kind of like me. I didn't stay at Holiday Inn Express last night, so I have to rely on experts to tell me, hey, you're an architect. You went through architect school, and so they deal with cost estimates every day. And you're in the construction business. You're building schools. You're dealing with subcontractors every day. You know what the cost of materials are, not what they were, or not what we would like them to be, but actually real-time estimates of where things are. And so whenever all of those people came back and said, yeah, Dr. Hawkins, this is the neighborhood of what it would cost, those cost estimates, depending on how you apple to orange them, just a plain estimate was over $200,000, $200 million. And we got over 500,000 square foot in what we feel like we need at Cove High, and you multiply that times the square footage of new construction, and you go over you can do the math. You go over like $210 million. Okay, and so that's just the square footage. That doesn't count for site plan. That doesn't count, or buying land. That doesn't count for dirt work. That doesn't count for roads, utilities, and parking lots is expensive. Plumbing and parking lots, the 2 P's, are some of the most expensive things that you endeavor into. And so you've got all of these ancillary things too. Okay, so you built a new high school, but did you build a baseball field? Did you build a softball field? Did you build an auditorium? All the ancillary things that make schools go, that kids need and rely on, wound up well over $200 million. And so when you look at our financial advisors, that's black and white. Our bonding capacity is our bonding capacity, and that's $175 million. And we can't change that. That's the only people who can change that is the folks in Austin. And so it would be like this. Hawk, finna go buy him a house. I go down to the bank, I get pre-qualified for a $175,000 home. But I found a house that cost $225,000. Okay, I might can throw in, $15,000 of money that's in my savings. But at the end of the day, I don't have that money to be able to buy a $225,000 home. So I've either got to get a home that's smaller, that will fit my needs, or I've got to go find another home that's on the market that I can buy from. And so that's it. Bonding capacity drives what we can or what we can't do. We'd like to do a lot of stuff, but we are a property poor school district. We do not have the industry of Killeen or Temple or some of the other school districts across the state of Texas. And so we're limited on the amount of money that we can go borrow. And
property poor, does that just mean you don't have like larger things to contribute to the tax base, larger businesses?
Yes, it means that, if you had a a nuclear power plant in your district, or I'll give you an example in Livingston. We had a hydro plant that come off the dam that generated electricity. Well, that's a multi-$100 million endeavor there, and so it takes a lot of rooftops and houses to equal that multi-million-dollar endeavor. We had solar farms, okay? And those solar farms was about $100 million solar farm apiece. And so when you have those things, when you have paper mills, or you have, down in Barbers Hill, they've got Exxon, they've got oil refineries down there. They have a tremendous high tax base that they can tax from. So when you have, a huge tax base, then it generates a bigger capacity, because you only got so many cents that you can tax.
Right.
And so when that's exhausted, then that's all you got.
And in Cove,
so the more you can tax from with 50 cents, the more that you can borrow, because it generates more revenue on the INS side.
Yeah, and Cove has a lot of people that move and live there, working at the military base. And
It does. Number one, we don't have a commercial base. We don't have an industrial base of any significance. When you look at our top 10 taxpayers, you see people like Walmart and HEB, and they're great partners for us. Don't get me wrong, but those folks are grocery stores and retail stores, and they don't generate that revenue. The largest part of our tax base is residential, and in the residential sector, the homestead exemption is $140,000 that folks can get a homestead exemption for. And then aside from that, the disabled veteran exemption. Not to say that, hey, I'm all for that, but I'm just telling you what the outcome of that is that at the end of the day, you don't have but so much money that you can generate.
Right. So there are some limitations from the tax base, and so the facilities committee came up with a plan with those limitations, and they decided on 3 propositions, and this will be 3 different things that residents will be able to vote on, correct?
Correct.
They'll have 3 different things. So some of these could pass, some of them can fail, right?
Yeah, one of them could pass, or none of them could pass, or all 3 of them could pass.
Mm-hmm. So Proposition A, this is the biggest one, and it's going to be $142 million, and there's going to be renovations to the high school, Fairview Jewel Elementary, and Coppers Cove Junior High. One of the things about this part that was interesting to me was the large addition to the Career Technology and Education Facility. What is that, and why was that made a priority for the Proposition A?
Well, the other, you ask about the high school, and the other thing that folks talked about was a 9th grade center. And so that was discussed. Why don't we take 750 kids out of the high school and build a small center for our freshmen? And every educator that I know would bristle if you talk about transitions. Where statistically do you have the most trouble with kids? It's when they go from one grade level to another at a different place, right? 6th grade, you'll see districts have 6th grade orientation, okay? Freshmen, you'll have freshman orientation. So when you make breaks in their education, you have this deal, it's like they're going to another country, and they're having to learn everybody on that campus, and it's, if you look at the state scores, there's tons of data out there that tells you that the best thing you could do is go from pre-K to 12th grade where there's no breaks in anything, but that's not realistic to put 8,000 kids on a campus. And so at some point you do have to make breaks. And so the committee also looked at a school that size would cost you 60 to 70 million dollars. Okay, that does not include land, utilities, or any of the ancillary programs that you have to have, because we're teaching career tech programs in junior high. And so freshmen, you've got to have a welding shop, you got to have a wood shop, you've got to have all of the high dollar things that you would have there. And then third thing that they looked at was logistically, if you have your ninth graders sitting over, 2 miles away or across the fence, wherever you want to put them, you've got freshmen that are in your band. And so those freshman kids have got to get to band practice, so they got to come back to the high school. And then you got to get them back to the freshman center, or you've got athletes, or you've got different organization clubs and groups that kids as freshmen are engaging, involved with, competing with the rest of your school. And the last thing they looked at was this. Okay, if we spent $70 million and took that out of everything, you still got a high school that's entering the end of its life cycle. So you've still got to spend, probably $60 million at the high school. Now you're at $120 million on those two campuses alone, and you haven't put any ancillary programs in there. So it becomes cost prohibitive. And so the next question was, okay, what can you do? The future of education today revolves around parent choice. And if we're going to be, if those kids that come to us and choose to come to Cove, because parents today are mobile. They can live in Cove and regardless of the military or not, they can be in, North Dallas tomorrow. Parents can move. They have the capacity and ability today into society to choose where they live. Not like when I grew up. We all grew up on the family farm, and we wasn't going to sell the farm. The farm was what fed us. The farm was where we lived. And so we didn't move around. Our family was tied to that farm, and today parents can pick up and they can move anywhere. So we're in the time of parent choice. We have wonderful programs at Cove High, like with our dual credit programs. But what we know is this: 60% of the kids at Cove High want to do skills, crafts, and trades. They want to be a plumber. They want to be an HVAC technician. They want to be an LVN. They want to do things. They want to be a welder. They want to be a cosmetologist. They want to work that Fanix robotic arm and go to work for Tesla. So if 60% of your customers are coming to you wanting something, if you don't provide them with that 60% of your customers will no longer be your customers. They'll go find it somewhere else. And so you start looking at what is out there that you can see that other people have done that are visionaries. And one thing that comes to mind is Forney ISD has the OC, or Opportunity Center. And they passed a $1.2 billion bond to build that thing. Now, Forney has 2 high schools. And on those 2 high schools, they started getting at capacity. And so they were able to build this opportunity center that brings career tech kids in there from both of those campuses. And the bottom layer of it is like a mall. It's a storefront. So the community can come in and they can get their tires changed. They can go down to the bootleg generic Starbucks and get coffee. They can buy their wife some flowers on the way out. They can get their hair cut. And so those kids in Forney have a storefront to where they're engaging their community. They're learning entrepreneurial skills. They're learning real life skills to be able to go out and enter the workforce. And then back behind those what I call labs is classrooms. And so they're getting real world experience. They're in labs and classrooms, learning those skills, crafts, and trades. And then up on the second floor up there, they have their academic classrooms. And so the 74,636 square foot is a kind of a campus within a campus, and it is planned to give our kids the skills, crafts, and trades that they need to go out into society and have a leg up on folks from other schools. And so that's kind of the foundation that the high school plan is built around, because, as I said, if we move kids off this campus, we still have kids that have to go to Cove High that will need a lab that will enable them to get the skills that they need to go out and perform. Our culinary lab is grandma's range, is what I call it. My grandma, I wish I could eat another meal off her range, but she had an oven there, and that oven looks just like my grandma's did. Today, kids have commercial ovens and commercial kitchens that they're preparing meals in that culinary lab, and our high school can't support that because it doesn't have enough ventilation. We can't just go in and retrofit one of those rooms without doing some major work on that building in order for it to have enough ventilation to have commercial kitchens in it. And so, that would be a, Bulldog Cafe to where people can come and eat and enjoy their time there. And so that's kind of that whole footprint of what that is. The rest of those three propositions, Eric, that you mentioned there is, the remainder of the high school particularly is what I call Chip and Joanna in it. And that's that you create, just like Chip and Joanna at Magnolia, they go in and they get a property that's on the end of its life cycle. They have demolition day, and then when they walk out of there, it's a new house. And so the rest of that renovation aspect is kind of what that's dedicated to. Fairview is a little bit different, and I keep hearing people say, "Well, that's the same plan. That's the same plan as in the last bond." And so I can go through several things that tell you that no, it's not the same plan. But Fairview, Miss Jewel, there was only like one wing and then about 20 yards of another hallway on that campus in the previous bond that was going to be addressed. And by doing that, there would still be parts of Fairview Miss Jewel that didn't get touched. And so in the current plan, Fairview Miss Jewel will be touched from one end to the other. And then there's new construction right in the middle where kids, they have to leave Fairview at Miss Jewel, and going back and forth between those two, there's not a connection. So a kid that will walk from you west side all the way to the east side has to go outside the school at some point, which is, it starts to become questions with parents and safety. I've had a lot of that. But in this plan, there is a cafeteria that's built in the middle with all of the specials, so it's more centralized. And then, like I say, that whole campus becomes addressed. The Cove aspect, Cove Junior High, there was restrooms that was the only thing that was going to be at that campus.
For last one.
In the last bond. In the current bond, all four wings are being addressed, as well as the cafeteria is being enlarged, and it is also restrooms on it as well. So it's it's just like Fairview, just like Copperas Cove High. All three of those campuses are being gone through.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the lion's share of where the bond is going to be about. It's $142 million for Prop A. So moving on to Proposition B, this one is going to be $12.2 million, and it's going to focus on the band hall and locker rooms. Can you tell me what's going on with that one?
Yeah, so, at one time, Cove High was 4A, and, now we're 6A. And during that time, we really didn't build anything extracurricular. And I know in reading those former posts and everything, there's an aversion to doing anything for, extracurricular athletics. But, those programs are vital to the lives of kids. Literally, CTE programs, extracurricular programs save kids' lives. They come to school because they want to participate in those programs. And so, if you don't include them in a bond, or do you get them out of fund balance? Because you can't get them out of your M&O budget. There's not enough money there to do that. There's barely enough money coming from the state to cover the cost.
Can you tell me what M&O is?
Maintenance and operations.
Okay.
That's what the state, you generate from the state in order to be able to operate your schools, not build capital projects.
Okay.
And so in the scheme of things here, we've got kids that don't have lockers because we've got a lack of locker room space. And you take the band program there in fine arts, because it's not just about the band, it's about fine arts as well, because the music is taught in the band hall when band isn't going on. And so, the people that our band is competing against have multiple areas that you can have percussion in one area, you can have woodwind in the other area, and then all the kids has lockers, because we're going to, at some point in the near future, we're going to be a 300-person band, 300-student band. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the lockers for those kids. And so, and then same thing with athletics. We don't have lockers for all of the kids and all of the sports, because we're doing more sports than we've ever done. But whenever we added a sport, we didn't add them a locker room either.
Yeah. Okay, and moving on to the third one. This is going to be $11.2 million, and this one is to add artificial turf and to an outdoor practice field, and to make an open air pavilion. How did they come to the decision to include those?
Well, this is the one I think that people say, well, this is just like the last bond. It was in the last bond. Well, there's truth to that, because the needs haven't changed. And talking through with the committee, this project here has really come about because of regulations. You've got the University Interscholastic League, and they have what's called like a global wet bulb. And you say, well, what is that? It's temperature, relative humidity, and wind speed, to name a few things, that they come up with a number, and they cap it, and they say kids can't practice when you go above this number. And so there's numerous districts across the state that have a covered pavilion. It's an open air pavilion. It's not an indoor practice facility, but that shade provides enough cover from the sun in order to let your teams practice.
But how big are we talking here?
Well, it is, I thought I had a 65,000 square feet.
Help me imagine how big that would be.
We'll walk under a football field, and just picture standing under a football field. It is a huge pavilion. And like our band right now, they compete on turf. When they go to marching contests, they don't march in the parking lot. I read somebody had sent me a deal that said, Dr. Hawkins, why can't the band just practice in the auditorium? Well, it's a marching band contest, and there's not a room to march in the auditorium. And so right now they're marching out in a parking lot. And so and we've had a mild summer, okay?
Yes.
But
yes.
we've also dealt with and had to combat heat with some of our band kids, because there, you know what happens when that Texas sun hits that asphalt. You shoot one of those thermometers on there, and all of a sudden you see how hot it is. You know, you can cook an egg on it. And so, you know, having the capacity for them to participate on something that is something that they're going to compete on, having the capacity for all of the sports to be able to, you know, if you've got a lightning storm that comes through and your baseball team is competing for a district championship, well, you got to call practice. You got to wait till the storm comes through, or you can go to a covered facility. You know, districts that have these things, the elementary field day, you know, you get a lot of elementary kids that don't have a lot of time out in the sun, and you know, you go to a field day, well, they're out there for several hours. And so a lot of these schools have went to that, to where they're putting their elementary kids at field day under that pavilion, and it, you know, it's safer for skin cancer and all of those kind of things. And so that's what they're trying to avoid. But it is a covered artificial turf practice field. You know, you've got the Copperettes, you've got the cheer team, you've got JROTC, you've got multiple groups that would be using that multi-purpose field.
Okay. And moving on, we've already been talking a while, but there's still a few more points I'd like to get to before we're finished. So because this time around, the bond split into 3 propositions. Last time it was one proposition. My assessment is they split it up this way to prioritize that. So the most important things could have a better chance to pass, and some things that may be more divisive, they would be willing to live with that. Do you think that's a good evaluation?
Yeah, I would frame it that the community committee was really trying to listen to the community. And if you go back to the social media wars that was going on in 2024, that was a complaint that was listed time and time again, was that the community wanted a choice. They wanted to be able to look at things and make a choice as to some things that they would support and some things that they wouldn't. So I think the proposition deal in breaking that out really revolved around, and here's the other thing is, not only listening to the community, but some of these people were against the former bond. And so they were probably some of the people that was posting those very things out there, who's now got their input into the community committee and changed the format of the way things are rolling out as far as what you can vote for and what you can vote against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess wrapping up the bond thing, anything else you want to talk about as far as bonds before we move on from that? Otherwise, there's like one more topic.
Yeah, we do a podcast. We're going to have a construction person there tomorrow. Next week we'll have an architect. The next week we're going to have a CTE bring some things. We're just trying to really educate everybody on it. And I think the last thing that I would wrap with would be this. And I keep hearing the people say, this is the same bond, this is the same bond. And you know, the facts of it are that it's not. And so I'll walk down through just a few of those things. And the first one is as you mentioned, the cost of those. You mentioned the cost. And people that I've talked to really don't care what cents. You know, the cents deal kind of gets lost in things. But what financial impact does it have on me and my household budget? And so as you look at Proposition 1, that's a $142 million proposition. And what I did was I took the old bond brochure and I looked at that thing, and they compared a $200,000 home. And so I tried to compare apples to apples to show that this is a different bond. And so as I looked at that, Proposition A cost the taxpayer in a $200,000 home about $239 a year. That's about $19.96 a month. Proposition B cost a monthly guesstimate of about $1.72 on that $200,000 home. And Proposition C cost about $1.57. And so I looked at those, and then I compared them to what the cost was in the previous bond, and it was $27.81. And so it's, $4 a month cheaper from this bond to the last bond. Other things that are different in it is if you take the high school alone and you look at that, you have to understand that we lost from 24 to 25 about $25 million in bonding capacity. In 24, we had about $200 million in bonding capacity. Today, we have about $175 million, okay? But we also lost buying capacity because inflation over that length of time, from the time that this $175 million bond went out in 2024, we've lost about $28 million in buying capacity. So how do you accomplish all these things without we're doing more stuff for less money? And so part of it is you go back to that cafeteria in the high school. Well, in the previous bond proposal, the cafeteria moved from one side of the campus to the other side of the campus. Softball field moved from one side of the campus to the other side of the campus. Tennis courts moved from one side of the campus to the other side of the campus. And so the architects looked and tried to figure out a way to make a proposal that was cost effective as possible. And I think that really accentuates the difference in these two proposals is you got moving from one side of the campus to the other. You've got a CTE 75,000 square foot deal. There was no storefront vision from the previous bond, the previous committee. That was not a part of that. If you look at Fairview Miss Jewel, you see that was only just maybe a third of that campus. That was $13 million of the campus. And now you've got new construction, and you've got $21 million, but you've got new construction and the entire campus being taken care of. You've got Coppers Cove Junior High, that there was restrooms being added to on there. And in this proposal, you've got the entire segment of those things, that campus being addressed. And so there's definitely, if you're saying it's the same proposal because of the address, then that's your facts and you can use them. But really and truly, it is some of the same needs being addressed, but the lion's share of it has a whole lot of differences.
Well, Hawk, I'm afraid we're out of time.
Okay.
I'm getting the signal to wrap it up.
We got a lot going on there, like the Grammys.
Yeah, it's time to wrap it up. Was going to ask about the accountability ratings, but we can save it for another time.
Okay. Well, thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
God bless and go Dogs.
Thanks for coming.
Thank y'all so much. And enjoyed it.